So you remember this little fella?
I'm the tall one. You're the short one.
Merry Brandybuck from the Lord of the Rings films. In a trilogy that intense, that epic, and that long, Merry was the comic relief. And the guy who played him, Dominic Monaghan, well, he's pretty much the same way. He grew up in Germany, then England. His parents were what he would call hippies. He loved nature and animals, does sound pretty hippie, which makes him the perfect host for a show called Wild Things. However, when Dom was 5 or 6, he would watch The Empire Strikes Back over and over and obsess about the people in the movie. He knew then that he wanted to be an actor. In the summers, he did youth theater, and with just his second audition ever, Dom scored a role on a hit series called Hetty Wainthropp Investigates.
The guy on the last case found that out too.
Then he landed the movie trilogy that, well, in terms of success and obsessive fans, would rival his childhood love of Star Wars.
Huckleberry Ferry, follow me.
The Rings movies made him a star. And, still in his mid-20s, Dom found himself partying a little too hard and lost in L.A. Luckily, he found himself only to get lost again.
I think he's pushed your button too many times, if you ask me.
Dom had a good run on that TV show, playing a rocker, battling an addiction, and fighting for survival. His latest film takes that to the next level. It's called The Day, and it asks the question, in a moment of total desperation, how far would you go to survive?
Everybody, please welcome Dominic Monaghan. Nice to see you, man. How are you?
Good, man.
How was the show? Things are okay?
Yeah, man, things are good.
Yeah? So you're in a post-apocalyptic movie, and I'm curious about the first time you had seen a film like that and how it might have resonated with you.
Yeah, you know, I'm a big movie fan. It's the reason why I became an actor. So, growing up, I was allowed via my dad, if I gave a good argument, to watch a movie slightly outside of my age range. For example, when I was, I think, 12, I asked my dad if I could watch The Deer Hunter. And my dad was like, well, it's kind of a rough movie, you know, people getting shot in the head and stuff. I'm not sure if that's a good idea. But I gave him my argument, which was like, you know, I heard the filmmaker's really amazing, and, you know, De Niro is my favorite actor, and he let me stay up late on a school night to watch it, and then we talked about it afterwards. So, you know, I like those. My favorite thing about The Day, the movie that I'm in, is that it is post-apocalyptic, but they don't necessarily explain
what
has happened, which allows the audience member to just create it in their own minds, you know, and that gives the audience a little bit of credit for their intelligence. Like, you can work out what it's going to be, but
it
also
plays on the audience's fear, because you have this moment where whatever it is that you're carrying in terms of baggage, that's what you apply to the movie, isn't it?
Right, yeah. And, you know, what must have occurred for these guys to only have, like, 2 cans of beans and half a rabbit? You know, what's happened in the world? Where are all the, you know, derelict supermarkets or the grocery stores? Where did they all go? You know,
but in your mind, what happened? Had you figured it out?
In my mind, yeah. Although if it's not necessarily 100% important for my character or for the film itself, I don't spend a huge amount of time trying to work out what happened. But I think the short answer for me was that there was some sort of nuclear winter that we were going through. You know, some large war type event has occurred, and this is kind of the day after tomorrow. You know, that feeling of, okay, this is when we pick up and start again.
I mean, it's an incredibly Cold War identity, to just never be sure when this is going to end.
Yeah, yeah.
But always be aware. You know, you still hear about bomb shelters, and you still hear about. You grew up in Germany, and at a really crucial time.
Yeah, yeah.
The Cold War was still pretty strong. What do you remember from? You were young, but what do you remember from that time?
I remember Germany being split right down the middle. You know, I was born in Berlin, lived in Germany, was very connected to Berlin, still am, still feel very connected to Berlin. And I remember that city being split between the kind of affluent West and the struggling East, and how sad that was. And we would go to Checkpoint Charlie, which was the division, and we'd go to the museum and stuff like that. And then when the wall came down, I think I was probably 10 or 11, and I remember my mom giving me a book for my birthday, because it came down a couple of days after my birthday, middle of December, and my mom gave me this book, and she was very emotional, you know, kind of crying and saying, you know, it probably won't feel like it will feel in a few years for you, but this was, you know, kind of a big deal for your dad and I, and it's close to your birthday, and...
You seem to have a really, I mean, your relationship with your parents growing up, your development is really neat. I mean, the idea that they were really interested in that part of your intellectual development, and they tied your intellect to your emotion.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad's a teacher, my mum's a nurse, so they both grew up in a kind of lifestyle that was based around education. Obviously, my dad taught for a living, so he's big on knowledge and book reading and you know, learning and expanding your mind and stuff. And obviously, my mum, to be a nurse, had to have some sort of, you know, university education and stuff. So it was a big thing to be reading and learning and getting into new stuff. And as adults, what that's transpired into is us swapping music and films and books and stuff. I mean, you know, I get like new music recommended to me by my 60-year-old mother, which is not the coolest thing in the world, but I mean, you know, sometimes pays off because I get into new bands and stuff.
Is it a relationship that you thought you'd have?
Yeah, it's evolved over the years. I mean, I never really knew what it was going to be. I left home when I was relatively young. You know, I started working when I was just 18 and was out of the house by that point. And though felt very Mancunian and still do, never really lived there post kind of 20 years old, you know. So my mum and dad traveled a lot when we were kids. You know, I was born in Berlin. We moved to a few different places in Germany and then came back. So that traveling gypsy-like aspect has come into my brother and I's way of living. So my mum and dad are very happy to fly to LA to see me, or fly to New York, or fly to Australia to see me.
You were young, and if you think about, I mean, you spent a significant portion of your 20s, you know, in that Lord of the Rings franchise. You were gone for a long time, and it's in a really important developmental stage for you. Your key friendships, your day-to-day experiences were all there. So when you left that, when that franchise was over, what was going on inside you when you realized, oh, that's done?
Yeah, that was really formative because leaving England to go to New Zealand, I said bye to my grandmother, who was like weeks away from death, and I never saw her again, and I kind of knew that, you know, flying to the other side of the world, and she was very sick at the time, and I remember kind of thinking, it's probably the last time I'm going to see my grandma, and that's a little trippy. And then broke up with a long-term girlfriend of kind of a couple of years, and she wanted to come to New Zealand with me, and, you know, I knew this was something I kind of had to do on my own, and I just said, I think I need to do this on my own. So that was the kind of dissolving of that relationship. And then, you know, in New Zealand, made great friends and had all these experiences, learned to surf, did bungee bungee jumping for the first time, horse riding, sword fighting, all that kind of stuff. And then when I came back, I think there was just an element of coming back down to earth a little bit, you know.
Did depression set in at all?
Yeah, I kind of got a little lost in LA for a while, you know, drinking and drugs and the wrong, well, maybe the right women, but just at the wrong time, you know.
And you perhaps handled it wrong.
Yeah. But I've always kind of walked that edge a little bit, and I enjoy that, you know. I enjoy that fine line. I never really got sensible, and I don't think that really plays into the job that I do or who I need to be. I try and live a life based in a semi-play type state, because as actors, what we do is we play. I mean, we're essentially doing dress up and playtime. You know, when you're a kid and you're like, oh, let's play pirates, or let's play wizards or whatever. You know, that's all you're doing as an adult, as an actor. You're just doing it, you know, as an adult and trying to immerse yourself in it as much as possible. So I play all day. I'm consistently playing, you know, Words with Friends on my phone. I play Scrabble all the time. I play chess all the time. I'm always playing games with people.
Is part of the reason why you like the idea in your new movie that they don't really explain a lot of the stuff is because your experience with Lost, and you're like, this is great, let's just make the audience figure half this out?
Yeah, I'm really turned on by the notions of life and death and life after death and all that kind of stuff. And obviously there's death is very close to the door in The Day. Yeah. And, you know, death is quite close to the door in Lord of the Rings and in Lost. You know, I'm consistently exploring this notion of death for me, you know, because I think our ideas of death are a little limited, and I think that when we die, for want of a better word, I think that there is a life that continues after that. It's just not a life that we can kind of conceive of, you know, like the body goes still and the heart stops and the brain stops working, so we consider that death. But I actually think that it becomes something new and it becomes something else. And I feel like there's been moments in my life where I've glimpsed that, or I've thought what that could be, or I've had a notion of that. And because of that, I now have no fear of death. I was really scared of death for a long time. Up until my late 20s, I was terrified of death, you know. And now I'm not scared of death. I mean, I'm scared of the dying process, because it always seems so painful, you know. But I'm not really scared of what happens after you die now.
So we're going to come back more. We're going to talk about favorite accents and perhaps the one he just can't do. And also, what would you like to do? Own a forest. We'll find out about that. Anthropology with Dominic Monaghan after this.
You have very big eyes, very big blue eyes. Do you think this is the reason why you are successful and famous? Big blue.
Yes.
Elijah, I must finish now, but I must tell you now that it is Dom Monaghan talking to you.
Brilliant.
How are you, mate? How are you?
I do it.
We're back here with Dominic Monaghan. So, tell me the story of that. What happened there?
It's one of my favorite things I've ever done, I think. You know, Elijah and I are very, very close, and we were in Berlin doing press for, I think, the Two Towers. Essentially what we were doing was we were in a hotel, and we would sit down, and interviewers would come in and talk to us, and then the interview would be filmed, and they would take the tape. But what Elijah was doing was he was sitting in a hotel room in New York, talking directly to a camera, and he couldn't see anyone, and he would just hear a feed in his ear from the interviewer. So they said, hey, why don't you go in, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning in New York, why don't you go in and just say, hey, Elijah, hope you're doing okay, we miss you, we love you, hang in there, we'll talk to you soon, because he was jet-lagged and tired. And it just very quickly became me saying, well, why don't I go in and pretend to interview him? Why don't I go in and pretend to interview him and disguise my voice? Why don't we work out what we're going to do? And I was trying to get a rise out of him, and it's very difficult to get a rise out of Elijah. He just doesn't go for it. He's very sweet.
You own a forest, man. How does that happen?
Yeah, I got an opportunity a long time ago to find out how much carbon I was using in the average year. And because I was flying around the world with Lord of the Rings, they told me that, unfortunately, I was using a forest's worth. So they gave me the opportunity to then offset all the carbon I was using by buying what it is a mango tree plantation in India.
Do you get to go and visit and sit under your trees?
I've not visited it. It's in Bangalore, but what I've heard from a yearly basis is that they sell mangoes, they make profit. They plant more mango trees, they sell more mangoes, they make more profit. So it's growing, which is a great thing. And I love mangoes.
Understanding they're not in the book. Oh, it's all the wind. You do accents pretty well. Is there one accent that you simply can't do?
I have a hard time with Geordie. Do you know Geordie? Do you know what that is?
No, isn't that a British accent?
Yeah.
It's like Sunderland area?
Yeah, nice.
Close?
It's Newcastle.
Yeah.
Where...
Oh, they have a big rivalry, don't they?
Yeah, Newcastle
football,
and Sunderland are huge. Yeah. So that's difficult because it's a very peculiar sounding thing. But I'm relatively all right with like accents around England and, you know, New Zealand and South African and stuff.
Do Canadians have accents?
You guys do have accents. I mean, you guys say A, right? And yeah, you guys have like my understanding of Canadians is that you have the best elements of the kind of British Empire, the old British Empire, and then the good elements of America without the bad elements of both. You know, you guys have all like you guys drink like English tea and eat all our biscuits and all our sweets and candy and stuff. But then
if you're waspy, for sure you do.
Yeah. I like that. You can go get, like, you know, wine gums and stuff in Canada. You can't get that in America.
Speaking of Canadians, you worked with a Canadian actor who's been on the scene for quite some time, Shawn Ashmore. What was that like? What's he like?
Yeah, he's all right. I mean, it was a tough shoot, you know. So I think he's probably tired a lot, you know. So he was...
What do you mean tired?
You know, he's late quite a lot to work, and... you know, a little moody. I think most of the... If you were to be asked, like, a one-word description of Shawn, it would probably be, like, moody. Or, well, I describe him... In a word, I'd probably describe him as, like, dick, you know? But that's not a put-down, that's just honesty, you know? And he never really knew his line. He didn't know his lines too well. He wanted to always improvise because he didn't know what he was doing.
Is that frustrating for an actor like you?
It is frustrating because there's a real lack of professionalism about him, you know? And... but that's you just have to deal with that. Big egos, you know. All actors have big egos, and he had a very large ego.
Have you ever pranked him?
Never pranked him. No, that's not true. I'm pranking him right now. No, he was... It was a great cast. We all went through the same thing together. There's a camaraderie when you're all very cold and in the same place. And also, we were, for want of a better word, the good guys. And I think the good guys all stick together. It was interesting, because, like, on Lord of the Rings, when we had lunch... This is a really interesting thing about human societies. When we had lunch, there's large groups of people having lunch, 300, 400 people. All the elves sat together. All the orcs sat together, all the Uruk-hai sat together, the hobbits, and you'd, like, come over to, you know, all the hobbits, it would be a full table, and you'd go over to a table of Uruk-hai and say, can I sit here? And they'd be like, no, go back to the Shire, go over there, go sit there. So it's very interesting that people kind of find this secular kind of groups, you know.
It just takes a few days for society to break down, doesn't it?
Right, it's interesting.
Good to see you, man. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, man, you're welcome. That was fun.
Appreciate that. Dominic Monaghan, the film is called Today. We'll be right back.